It's good.
Hi, everybody. I see you're coming in. We're going to start in just a brief moment. Thank you for coming. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dealing with Difficult People and Difficult Conversations for Administrators. And that's a little bit difficult to say. We are
Yes.
We are recording today's session, just so you know. 2 housekeeping rules or items before we begin. And then my name is Laura MacDonald, and I'm the Director of Professional Learning at NCEA. So number 1, we will be sharing an online survey at the end of the session. That survey we appreciate. We share that information with all our speakers, and we take it very seriously so we know how to improve and how to serve you, our members, better. In that survey, there's a place where you can leave your email address and therefore then receive a certificate of completion, so you can show that you attended the class. In addition, today your way to engage with your speakers is through Q&A. You should see that on your screen. You will be able to put questions in there and respond to our speakers in that way, and they will be happy to get to those when they see fit. So for today's session, we have Scott Barron and Tom Hood. And before I hand off to them, let's begin all things as we do in prayer. So please join me in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. A prayer for patience. Blessed Mary, Mother of Consolation, pray for me for the virtue of patience. There are so many times when my lack of patience keeps me from becoming the kind person God wants me to be. Guide my thoughts to you and the example we have in your own life. Help me to be patient as you were patient. Through your guidance, may I become more accepting of others around me. Assist me to welcome difficult times with a patient heart. Pray for me that I will follow the Father to come into my heart and help me to grow patience. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And now, you guys are up. Thank you for being here.
Happy summer, everybody. Tom, I put on my Hawaiian shirt. I just had to commemorate the feeling of the summer, right? Because
you're looking the part.
We only get so much time. I mean, everybody thinks like summer lasts forever for educators, right? And it's like, bam, it's over, right? So it's like raising kids. It just happens so fast. It's done.
Yeah. Amen. Amen.
For sure. Well, thanks everybody for being here. We're so glad that you could join us. We had a bit of an interesting situation at the NCEA convention because we were really ready to entertain a pretty significant group that had signed up for the workshop, and then suddenly we realized after we arrived that the room was not designed for that many people, and we ended up creating a difficult situation, Tom. We didn't even mean to. Right?
We got some interesting feedback about, like, we controlled who was allowed in the room. We did not. We would have taken you all if we could, but the fire marshal was making sure that we stayed at capacity. So
they were kind of watching the room. Yeah, exactly right. So anyway, we're so glad that all of you could be here. It is, of course, it's kind of a hot topic. I know it's one that Tom and I get to work together as he's leading his school and so Tom's he's actually got some personal testimony that he could share from some of the adventures of working with difficult people and situations from the spring. It's what do we know? It's part of life. It's part of the educational experience. And so we're going to talk through some strategies for doing this. As was mentioned, this is geared towards the administrator. We recognized from the feedback from the conference that some of the teachers in the room felt like it was more administrator oriented. And it was. I mean, that was an accurate assessment. So we have a teacher version that we're doing in July. So if you're a teacher, just know that is the way that we set this up. It is from the perspective of an administrator. there's not a huge amount of difference between the two, but it's more of the examples that we'll share and some of the perspective that we talk about between the two. But anyway, we'd love for you to join us for that conversation. You can sign up on the NCEA website to learn more about that. Tom, you want to introduce yourself, and then I will.
Yeah, good afternoon, good morning, depending on what part of the country you're in. My name's Tom Hood, and I'm the president of St. Agnes Academy and St. Dominic School in Memphis, Tennessee. We're a Dominican Catholic independent school in grades PK through 12. We're actually two schools. We're two single gender schools. So I've been the president there for 7 years, and prior to that, I was the president of a secular 6 through 12 school in northeastern Pennsylvania. And prior to that, I was an Army officer for 22 years. So leadership and difficult conversations of any type have been something that I've been focused on and have made a difference as I've worked with various organizations and various people. And so we're excited to share not the answer, but some of the answers that work for what we found work for us.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, there is no the answer, right? I mean, every one of you have your own different styles and strengths and situations and what we call context. And so obviously we want to make sure that we're giving you some tools, but you're going to have to adapt those to your situation and to you and how you work and the relationships that you build. One last point, that the teacher version of this will be on July the 12th at 1:00 p.m. That was put into the chat box. And so that's what we encourage you to do. And we have another veteran on here, Rich. Thank you for your service as well. You and Tom both, and I'm sure there's others also. So thank you for that. That's a real blessing. Obviously, dealing with difficult people in difficult situations is not unique to educators. Certainly those in the military and those in other businesses and others have a real challenge in this as well. And so we want to share with you some of the things that we've learned. Again, my name is Scott Barron. I'm the CEO of a company called School Growth, and we work with schools all across the world and particularly North America to help them become the best versions of themselves. And so we get the privilege of working with a wide range of different types of people and different types of schools and help them figure out how to build stronger relationships and build culture and actually find some joy in the work, right? I mean, this is hard enough as it is. And sometimes we allow some things to steal the joy. And that's why developing some tools around dealing with difficult people and difficult situations is so important, because we want to make sure that we have we've thought it through and we're ready, because we know it's inevitable. So we just want to make sure that it's a thoughtful process. We've had a chance to work with Tom and his team for a few years now as they've developed their growth plan and figure out what are our strengths and how do we compete in our market, and knowing that we have our own story and history and people and timeline, and there's so many things that make us unique. So how do we build on that? We're not interested in really copying and pasting from others, but we want to find a pathway that leads to authentic, sustainable excellence, right? And so one of the things that we do share, and you can scan this with your phone if you'd like, it takes you to a landing page just to let you sign up for our weekly encouragement for educators. That's a message that we share every Monday morning. It's just to say, come on, guys, we can do this. Yeah, it's hard. I totally get it, right? But think about this, right? Just in perspective, and we share some encouragement and faith, as well as to our calling to this work. And so, welcome you to sign up for that. It's free, but it's a way to start your week off with some perspective and some encouragement, right? So, we really welcome you, and we've received a lot of exciting feedback about the Monday encouragement, and so thank you for all those responses, but also encourage you to sign up for that for a free tool. One of the things we know, of course, about dealing with difficult people is we have to accept the fact that difficult people and situations, they're part of the journey, right? I mean, there's no way you and I, we've spent a lot of time together, and I've given you reason to forgive me, and you've given me reason to forgive you, right? I mean, that's
Right.
how people work. We don't get an exception to those realities just because we're in education, right? So I guess the first thing we want to encourage you, the administrators on our session today, to consider is that this is something that we have to view not as something that's a distraction, or something that's, why do they keep getting in my way? This is the job, right? And when we develop that healthy perspective and mindset, you're going to see the calling that we have to do this work requires us to not only specifically deal with points with difficult people and situations, but we have to actually be committed to it, right? Because one rule of thumb about conflict is that conflict avoided is not conflict healed, right? Conflict avoided is not conflict healed. And so as we're leading our Catholic schools, in our modeling of Christ and the testimony that we're trying to create, we do have to have the ability to deal with difficult people and situations, to deal with conflict and do it in a way that is God honoring, right? That builds relationships and sustains trust, right? Very important part of this journey together. And it will help you, I think, in your team as you begin to talk these things through, is be ready, expect it, right? And it's a very healthy perspective to have together.
Yeah, I would even go a step further and say that, the relationships, this is what we're called to do as administrators. We are not driving the train of your school, or at least I'm not driving the train of my school from the engine. I'm driving it from a couple cars back. The people that are the teachers and the educators at our school are the ones that are making a difference on a daily basis. And our job is to keep them aligned with the mission of the school and to support them as they go forward. So, it's really, this is a key piece. We say difficult people, but they're not always difficult. They're just, situations are difficult, and we're doing something that's incredibly hard, and that's leading people to mentor, love, and educate young kids. And that's an incredibly important mission. It's one that I was drawn to, and I know that the people on this call have been drawn to. And so it's something that is vital to the future success, not only of that generation, but our country and our world as we form Dominican, or as we form Catholic kids. And so we started working with Scott at my school about 4 years ago, and this was the oh yeah, I call it the oh yeah moment. Some people would call it an aha moment. It really is that people and relationships are the key to our success. And as an administrator, my relationships are really with the educators and the parents, with the adults in the community. Almost all of us got into education to be around young people. But if you're an administrator, you spend most of your really important time dealing with adults and having conversations. So building these relationships and working with these people, they are the key to our success. Educators are our product. And if we have great educators, then the rest of the school gets really easy to run.
Hey, listen, everybody, it's really important not to kind of blow past two key points that Tom just made there. Vital. One is your first ministry is to your faculty, right? Your first ministry is to your faculty. Because if you can build a team of talented, energized, engaged educators, you'll change the lives of your students in phenomenal ways, right?
That's right.
But if we bypass that, if teachers and educators become a means to an end, then we've really lost a healthy design for a school, right? Because as Tom, again, the second point Tom said was, your product isn't your students. Your product is actually your faculty and the experience they create every day, right? Every day. And if you can create consistency in that experience, right? If you can build this incredible team, right? And then learn to love them like they are, they will create the life-changing experiences on a predictable basis for your families, right? 100% of the time, the problems in a school are people problems. Right. And that's something that we want to focus on curriculum. We want to focus on, marketing. We want to focus on whatever, anything but people, right? Because that's hard. I don't want to have to deal with that stuff. I just want to kind of look the other way. I don't want to. You're in the people business, right? 80% of your budget is people. 80% of your value is people. 80% of the way that you market your school is through people. 80% of 100% of your problems are people, right? I mean, it's just the way it works. So we have to sustain, we have to shepherd, right? We have to shepherd educators. And that means we have to put the right people in the room first, right? And that's a whole nother conversation. But sometimes the difficult people, these situations are coming up because you have the wrong people in the first place. Right. That's just honest, is being able to understand alignment with your mission and your core values is crucial to your growth. And sometimes there's a root cause. And if you keep asking those, if you go through there's a methodology for determining the root cause of things. It's called the 5 whys, right? If you find yourself having multiple kind of difficult conversations with somebody, you might want to step through the 5 whys, right? Why are we having these problems? Why is there just a constant point of conflict? And well, I will tell you that the majority of the time is because they don't align with our mission and our core values, right? And it's very hard to fix an adult's attitude. Okay, so that's our fact number 1. Fact number 2, we know, is that cave people exist. Okay, now let me give you the acronym, right? Cave people is citizens against virtually everything. Right? Citizens against virtually everything. So what we know from psychological research is around, from a couple of different states, around 17% of the population are cave people, right? Jesus didn't make them happy, and you're not going to make them happy. It's just who they are. The glass isn't just half empty, it's empty, right? They're the Eeyores of the world who suck all the energy out of the room, right? And so there is a bit of a freedom in being able to acknowledge that there are people who are profoundly committed to a negative spirit and a negative attitude. It's something that we want to pray for them and encourage them. But here's what we know, right? There's a pretty high probability, Tom, that we've got cave people in our parent body, right? Probably 100%, but at least 17%, right? We definitely going to have cave people in the parent body. However, what's the probability of having cave people on the payroll? Well, see, that's a problem, because cave people kill kids' character, right? You would not believe how many adults we've talked to, educators particularly, and we said, hey, tell us about an educator who most impacted your life. And as we go around the room, very often there is an educator who says, when I went into education, it was actually in response to an educator that I experienced who was just awful. I mean, they were sarcastic, they were mean, and we've had 60-year-old people with tears rolling down their face, talking about the words and the attitude that was expressed to them by an educator, right? Things that happened 50 years ago, they're still feeling like it happened yesterday, right? So our words matter, and who we put in that classroom and in that office and throughout the campus, it matters, right? And so we acknowledge that there are people who have a high propensity to negativity, but we have to be very careful as leaders of schools that we are being thorough and honest, because sometimes the most immoral, unethical decisions made in education are personnel decisions, right? Where we rehire cave people who we know have no business being in the classroom. And we've all experienced it. Everybody raise your hand, right? Amen, right? We've all had that type of a person in our class, but we have to own it now as the education leaders, that, hey, it's our responsibility and we're going to be very careful and wise about who we put in the classroom.
And I would just add to this that these people, because these people exist, not only do they adversely impact what your school is about, they sap your energy. And you have to own the fact that as a leader, your
Absolutely.
energy is going to be sapped. How many times have you gotten that phone call at 3:30 in the afternoon from one of the cave people, parent or educator? And I'm like, I do not want to take that call at this time. And I'm going to put it off. And a key piece of what we're trying to do is to make sure that we're addressing these people, because part of their modus operandi is to make it painful for you to work with them. And
Right.
and so then you don't, and that's the absolute worst thing that can happen. And so that really leads us to fact number 3, which is excellent leaders make decisions from positions of strength rather than fear. You have to be committed to the mission and vision and virtues. We call them community traits at my school, the virtues of your school. And as a leader, one of the things that you need to do at all times is to make sure that everybody that's on the payroll and the parents know what those are. What's the mission? What's the school like now? Where's the school headed with a vision? And what are the virtues that are just part of who we are and are really non-negotiable for us? And when you've articulated those properly to your community, then some people are going to self-select out, and that's okay. That's kind of what Scott's talking about when he says, hey, if people are on the payroll or families, I had a family last week at my school that was fussing about a decision we made, but it was in alignment with what we told them we were going to do. And so then that family has to make a decision whether they want to continue to be part of our community. And I know how hard that is, because in enrollment, everybody counts. But sometimes you can have addition by subtraction, whether it's an educator or a family. And so making sure that you're confident as great leaders, that you're confident in what the vision is for your school and what the important virtues are for your educators will go a long ways towards setting the tone as you go forward. And really, it'll allow you to have these conversations that we're going to talk about in a second, and really root them in the vision and virtues of your school.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know that when we say this from a standpoint of strength rather than fear, what we mean is that we have clarity about our expectations. We have, we know that that stuff's going to happen, right? We actually have a bumper sticker that says "School happens," right? And the implication of that is, yeah, I mean, we have to love families through all kinds of adventures of life, and faculty and board members and our community, and it's often unpredictable, and it is persistent, right? So we have to have a commitment that we're going to lead, right? We're not going to have life happen to us. We're going to happen to life, and we're going to have a clear direction, and we're going to use wisdom. We're going to use truth. Now, are there going to be times when I'm scared, right? Because I'm having to have a hard conversation, or I'm nervous at least. And of course, however, as a leader, you have to have executive presence. Right. And this is a vital part, especially those of that are listening to this that are principals, very important for you, because you have to have that ability to communicate both in your physical presence and then your words, what you say, what you write, right? You have to be able to communicate a level of confidence that you've got it. Now, if you need to have somebody to talk to in the background that you can cry to and you can talk to and you can share great, but don't use your faculty as your therapy session, right? That is not appropriate for a leader. It is something that you definitely need a coach or somebody that you can talk to, or a confidant, whatever, the appropriate confidant. But you need to be able to communicate a sense of, again, clarity, of confidence and direction, so that your family's faculty and they believe in you and they're willing to follow you, right? That's a vital part of this journey of school leadership, and it's one of the critical factors to longer tenure as a school administrator. Fact number 4, right? Our culture is our greatest advantage, but it's only as good as what we tolerate, right? Because I mean, a lot of us will talk about how do we describe our culture, Tom? We're a family, we're a
Right.
community, we're whatever, right? But
Yeah.
then, but we have sometimes boundaries to our culture, right? Sometimes, you know, families want to come and raise questions or whatever, and we give them the hand, right? It's like, whoa, 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 stay in your lane, bro, right? And instead, we have to have a culture that says, oh, you have a question, we have to give them the hand. We have to flip the hand over and say, come on in, let's talk. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to do everything that they say, but it does mean we're going to have a respectful relationship, and we're going to prepare our faculty and our families for situations that can come up during the school year and how we're going to handle them. That's easy, right? And we're going to talk it through. One thing that we suggest doing as a leadership team, and even with your other, maybe sometimes with your board, if you have particularly if you have a governing board, is to have a situation jar and draw out of that situation jar all the things that can happen during a school year, right? And so that we can kind of think it through. What are we going to do if and when some of these things happen? And all you have to do is Google, you know, this other school has gotten into trouble, or some of the things that have happened, right? And there's lots of resources for your jars. Our other schools, and sometimes ourselves, we've generated plenty of opportunities to fill that jar up, right? But what we want to create, though, right, is a culture that is predictable. And this is a huge advantage in your school when you have clarity about expectations. And what we've learned from educators is clarity is kindness, right? Clarity is kindness. And it means that we're going to communicate to particularly to our faculty, right? What are our expectations? Because we want to create a common sense. We have some guidance from scripture. We have some other guidance that we know just from what we know about ourselves and our natural strengths. So let's put that in writing. Let's you can actually create your core values and a rubric around that. But you want something that is quite specific, because when it comes to educators, we know that vagueness is not your friend, right? Having vague expectations creates more stress. It communicates a lack of support, and it creates gossip and dissension, right? Which are killers to culture. One of the things that we've emphasized here is a lot of us talk about different aspects of our culture. Again, we just self-describe as community, family, and other things. But here's the truth. Our culture is what we tolerate, right? And if we tolerate meanness and gossip, and we tolerate unprofessionalism, right? Well, then guess what? That's our culture, right? And we have to own that. And if you can actually build a very healthy culture, and it's a massive advantage when it comes to authentic and sustainable growth, is having a culture in which educators can thrive, and they can do an even more powerful job at loving and supporting and guiding your students and your parents, right? So it all begins with this people strategy and having a very intentional way. You're going to be way better at handling difficult people and conversations if you have shared principles, if you have a shared language together, and it's not you making it up as you go or a sense of that, but we've got this in writing, and we've agreed to it.
Not only have we agreed to it, Scott, but we're acting on it. This is the classic case where actions speak louder than words. And so, you know, we've written things down. I've stood up in front of the faculty and said, we're going to do this. But if I don't follow through with my actions matching what I said, then the words are worthless. And so when we say you're only as good as what you tolerate, it's only as good as how you act, is another way to think about that.
Great point.
You can't put your culture on a piece of paper and pass it on. And that really leads to fact number 5, which is this is school, it's not heaven. We are all sinners. We are all imperfect people. And that's why we're here. And frankly, our parents in Catholic schools in particular, I believe, sent their sons and daughters to us because of we're a school that recognizes that we're sinners, right?
Yep.
They are not looking for perfection, but they're looking for us to be honest and authentic with them at all times.
Mhm.
And again, this comes back to what I said before, is that our product is our educators. We need to lead them so that they can interact with not just with the kids, but with our families as well.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
a piece of that is that we have to acknowledge we're not always right. I have to acknowledge I'm not always right. Yeah, it's not, vulnerability is okay. God says that, you know, the faculty can't be your therapy session. That's different than being vulnerable, right? So
Right.
vulnerability is not being a therapy session. Vulnerability is letting people know that we're all swimming. Well, I call it swimming in the pool of doubt,
Mhm.
right? We're making decisions. We're basing them on our mission, vision, and virtues.
Right.
But there's always a question in my back of my mind: did I make the right decision? And it's okay for your people to know that you're struggling with that, but you're not going to deviate from what's true for us and for our school.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's one piece of it. And then as we get ready to go on to the next piece, I just say that um, parents are the same way. And so parents,
Mm.
I found that this year I've been had more conflict with my parents than I can remember in my previous 15 years leading school. And I'm still trying to process why that is, but we're trying to build a level of trust with parents. And again, that is tell them what we're about, mean, you know, do what we say what we do. But it still has created these levels of conflict with parents, and they are not always right either. This is not, it's a customer-based business, but the customer is not 100% right. They don't always know what
Right.
they're doing. We have to have a way to compassionately walk them back to what we think is going to work for their sons and daughters.
For sure. Hey, in about 15 minutes, we're going to open up for some Q&A, and you've got a button there on your Zoom session where you can click on and put a question in. If you have something you would like for us to specifically address a situation, type that into that question button, and we'll try to get to that. If we don't get to it here today, we'll post out to everyone sort of some written situations, or we will record a follow-up kind of conversation with Tom and I to kind of address some of those questions. But we want to get to some very specific, opportunities for you as you're dealing with different situations. As Tom was just talking about unhealthy versus healthy, how we deal with difficult people and situations, a lot of it goes back to the core of who we are and where we are in the first place. And this is what Tom was alluding to, is that if you look at, and Tom, we can kind of go back and forth on this some, right? Is
Yeah.
if we go with the unhealthy school organization, how we deal with difficult people, well, one of those is we just ignore them, right? I mean, we just kind of, Lord, let them go away. Please make them go
Yeah.
away. You just gotta, just hope that cancer doesn't spread, right?
Or it will fix itself. You know, they didn't meet a standard that we had, and they'll eventually figure that out on their own. And we know that doesn't work very well.
No, it doesn't work at all, right? What else? So an unhealthy school, right? Unhealthy schools have vague expectations. So everybody's kind of making up their own version of the school, right? There's no clarity around how we're going to handle questions, right? Everybody kind of gets to, either they can respond like, when I go through the school and I deal with different educators that are part of my team, sometimes they respond really well and others don't. And I don't know what I'm going to get. It's very inconsistent in terms of how they approach. Sometimes if I send an email to some of them, they'll never respond, and others will get back to me the same day, but I don't know, right? It's unpredictable.
Yeah. Hey, Scott, how about this one? I know you love this one. Unhealthy schools are transparent.
Oh,
Right? So when Scott first said to me that we don't want to be transparent, I did just what he did. I grabbed my heart and thought I was going to have to turn it in. But in fact, transparency is not always part of a healthy school, because so much of what we deal with is confidential in nature. Again, our parents and our teachers think we spend all our free time talking about other people. And so if we're overly transparent, it feeds into that narrative that all we do is talk about other people. We have responsibilities to be confidential. We will tell you what we can tell you, but it's not everything.
No,
We're
that's
going to
right.
we're going to have some secrets.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, right, there are many situations where we are dealing with information about, families and situations or whatever, it would be at least unprofessional, sometimes immoral, sometimes unethical, and sometimes illegal to share information out with everybody. So we do encourage wise leaders are not setting transparency as a goal. No one actually does that. Some people will throw that out, but I mean, come on, there's so many, and quite frankly, there's some people, you can't handle the truth. Right?
That's right.
You're not ready to handle. I mean, we have to deal with so much stuff. No, it's not about transparency, but it is about no secrets, no surprises. Right. And that's what Tom's getting to here is a healthy school has a commitment to a healthy culture, which means that we communicate predictably. Right. We have it's predictable, it's consistent, right? We're not keeping secrets, but there is a need to know about certain situations. But we prepare families. We have conversations up front to say, hey, there are things that are going to happen during the year. And there are some things that we will share out with everybody. But, if we end up having a situation with a student that it's behavioral or something else is going on, guys, we're not going to air that out with everybody. That would be unkind and even unprofessional. We're going to deal with each family and we're going to love them through this journey of life. And we know that are we going to have a student who makes a boneheaded decision this year? Of course, right? Well, we're going to deal with that family and we're going to move forward. And please understand, this is a really good conversation to have with your families up front. Beginning of the school year is that a democracy is a great way to run a country, but it's a terrible way to run a school. Right? This is not a democracy. This is a in some ways it's a nonprofit organization, and we're going to run it wisely and responsibly. Right? So we do have people that we seek wisdom from. We do have people who help us as we're trying to make difficult decisions. And unfortunately, we have a chain of command, but most of our parents aren't in that chain of command. Right. And that's kind of a direct way to say it, but we do have to prepare families that we're going to make the best decisions, and you got to live up to this. You have to honor, a wise decision-making process for resolution. Right. But we're going to make sure that we have a clarity and a cohesiveness and a communication and a consistency so that we have trust. Right. And Tom, this from what you've been doing there at your schools is, man, trust is the oxygen of a school.
Yep. I mean, it's the key to everything. Without it, the parents won't believe what we're saying, and the educators don't believe what we're saying. And so it's absolutely critical. I come back to the democracy thing real quick, because the joke in the Army when I was in the Army was, we defend democracy, we don't practice it. And schools are like that, right? We teach democracy, but we don't necessarily practice it. We have to be willing to share the why, right? Because the why is what builds trust. I've had a number of people say, I don't agree with the decision, but I at least understand why you made the decision. And that's the trust building process that Scott's alluding to.
It all feeds off of trust. And we'll say this over and over again. Trust is the oxygen of a school, just like with how COVID affected a lot of folks, especially early on. It began to affect your lungs and your blood, and your oxygen levels dropped. And that's what happens to a school. Often you'll see when it kind of got some form of COVID, right? Where the oxygen level, trust is low. And when trust drops, you find people assuming the worst of each other. Right. You find people when small things happen, they have what we call the princess and the pea syndrome. Little things cause all these bruises and things. And that, I think, Tom, to your point about sort of that, it seems like there's a more contentious relationship with parents today. And we are seeing that across the broad spectrum of folks that are members of the School Growth Network. And we are seeing that there is a pattern of more conflict. And so it's even more important now than ever that our administrators learn negotiation skills, right? And that's a part of this. Healthy schools, the leadership understands that we're not negotiating based on power. It's not, hey, I'm the administrator and you're not. So, get back in line, right? It's, hey, let's have a conversation. Let's listen. Some of their suggestions are good. Some of them not so good, right? But we're going to be willing to actively listen, engage in conversation, and find healthy ways to move forward together, right? In a level of unity and trust. That's a vital part of how we work together. Hey, one of the questions that's come up, Tom, is, what do we do if we have a parent who's really disengaged, and not just disengaged with the school, but even disengaged in how they interact with with their own student, and maybe even with the school and other situations, right? Are there ways to kind of address that and re-engage that parent? What would you suggest?
Well, I think it starts with this idea of community. And in our school, we talk about the idea that not just students attend St. Agnes and St. Dominic, but families attend St. Agnes and St. Dominic. So the parents have to be on board, and we want to partner with our parents. If they're unengaged in that they don't communicate, we just keep walking up the thing. Maybe it's an email, but often the more important the conversation, the more direct it has to be. So you go from an email to a phone call to inviting them in person. And I've even had times where I've told students that they're not going to be, or told families that their students are going to be welcome back at school because the parents won't talk to us, right? And the parents' response to that always is, well, you're attacking my child. And my response is, we're not attacking your child, but for us to help you as the first educators, the first teachers of your kids, for us to help you, you and I have to work together, which means we have to talk and meet. So that you have to stress the importance of being willing to talk.
Yeah.
And I think some of them have bad memories of school themselves, right? I had one person say, hey,
that's the truth.
I was afraid of school when I was a kid, and I'm afraid of school when I'm a parent. And so we've got to find a way to do that.
Yeah, and that goes back to trust, right? We have to keep trying to draw that back in. Don't let them separate. Go get them, right? And so here's another thought for you, Lisa. Thank you for your question, which is it's also important to think about. Hey, we need part of our strategy is to keep families engaged. Right. And engagement happens through relationships. And that's how we build re-enrollment, by the way, which is a vital aspect of growing our school organically and authentically. So the way we do that is build 3 deep relationships with every family. 3 deep relationships. In other words, we're not just having casual sort of, hey, how you doing? Kind of, I'm good, thanks, right? But really knowing each other, right? Spending time, going to dinner together, doing stuff together, right? And that could be between the family, the parents, and the teachers, administrator, coaches, parents, a parent, right? This is why having having parent ambassadors, having a formal process of engaging parents as ambassadors and helping you reach out and what we'll call mobilize the masses. It's a vital part, because almost every school today, especially Catholic schools, the best marketing strategy is networks of networks, right? Everybody's connected to other people based on geography or special interest or occupation or church or other special interests, right? So we're trying to leverage networks of networks and make sure that our families are raving fans. It's a great book, by the way, if you haven't read it, Ken Blanchard's book, Raving Fans. And so we want raving fans of our families. And so, be intentional about that is something to think about. Now, there's the other side of it, Lisa, and that is some families don't want to partner with you. They don't want to engage. I want to drop my kid off at the door. Hey, good luck. I've got them to this point. I need you to take them for this point forward. I'm feeding them and I'm doing this stuff. Honestly, right? That is the approach of some parents. And so this may be a parent that is of that mindset, and they're not looking to get involved in the school and other things. So obviously, one of the things that you can do to try to ensure those 3 deep relationships, and this is something that I know that Tom's team does, is we do at least once a semester, we do what's called the 99 and the 1 meeting, right? The 99 and the 1 meeting. You remember the parable Jesus said, right? The shepherd was willing to leave the 99 and go get the one, right? Because he loves his people so much that he's willing to they're good, but I'm not going to let this one get away. I'm going to go get them. Right, I'm gonna go bring them back in. And part of what you want to encourage, cultivate, and practice among your team is go get them. Right? Get them out of the carpool line and into a relationship, from a line to a circle, right? And that's for some people are so ingrained in your school. Honestly, Tom, you couldn't run them off if you wanted to, right?
They're
I
there
mean, they
every
just
day.
bleed the
Every
school.
day.
Yeah. And then there's others that are kind of loosely connected. They're somewhat there, but they're kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And then others are like satellites. They're just kind of spinning around. And right. So the question is, do we care enough to go get them? Right. Are we willing to invest that effort?
Yeah, and there's just so many different ways to do that. We're focused on trying to create opportunities for our faculty and our parents to interact with each other in low stress situations, because we know that not or lack of familiarity breeds mistrust. If I can spend time with you, we've had wine tastings, we've had painting sessions, we've had dad barbecues in the backyard where we're specifically targeting dads coming in and hanging with our teachers in a social situation so that they realize that we have the best interests of their children at heart. And that's, Chris is asking a question in the Q&A about how you deal with parents who don't want their child assigned to the section or to the level that you put them in.
Right.
And I always start with kind of stating the obvious, because parents can't hear it enough that we love their children and we want their children to be successful. And so in this case, we are putting them in a section or an ability level so that they can be successful, because success is so important to building that confidence for a young person to be able to grow and so on. So I keep reminding the parents, and we encourage our educators to remind the parents of our love for their children. And at Catholic schools, that's easy. That's why we're there. That's what Christ asks us to do. So
yeah, for sure.
You're still going to have people push back on that, Chris, but I still think that we never do anything to try and trick a child or to put them in a disadvantageous situation. We're there trying to make sure that they're the best version of themselves and as successful as they can be.
Yep. Yeah, great point. Hey, you're going to have difficult conversations, right? We know that that's a part of it. Some tips to kind of get you in the right mindset as we're moving into that.
Yeah, I call these are what I work with our leadership team. I call them the B's or the Boo's, right? And these conversations are the most important ones that you have at your school. And so one of them is be prepared. This is not the hey you in the hall. When you're getting ready to have a conversation about somebody that hasn't met expectations or hasn't been the best version of themselves, you need to be prepared and they need to be prepared. And so you can decide whether you're going to surprise them with it or not, but it is not something that you just kind of casually say, hey, let's talk in the hall. Being timely is tied to that. These things do not go away. And this is not the time for you to bring up the litany of sins from the first semester, even though we're in the month of April, right? I want to talk to you today about a very specific action that you did that I don't think reflected as well on you or on the school as possible.
Yeah.
And then 3 is to be calm. Look, everybody, Scott said it before, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody at the school wants to be the best version of themselves. This is not, we're not chewing people out. We're not yelling at them. We're trying to help them become better. And calmness is key to them hearing that. Being specific, again, this is not the time to talk about 3 or 4 different things. It's not the time necessarily to start with how great they're doing in one area. Don't cloud the conversation by talking about things that aren't relevant to the conversation. Let's be specific. Let's be clear about what the behavior is that's not proper and what we need you to do to be a better version of yourself. Talked about confidentiality with parents. It's equally important with teachers. The number of people that walk out of a principal or a president's office and think that the word is out about why they were in there it's mind-boggling, and so whatever is said in my office, in the privacy of my office, stays in the privacy of my office, and it needs to be the same way for you. And then really the last two is we're in there. Scott's written an excellent book, Love Them and Lead Them. It sits highly tabbed on my desk. We're in the business of loving educators. These are people that got into a very important ministry, right? People say, well, how did you go from being in the Army to being in education? I'm a Cold War baby. So when I was young, we hid under desks for a while. We did all that stuff. And I thought the way to make a difference in the world was to help defend the country. I now believe that the number one value for our country going forward has to be education. An uneducated populace of democracy cannot thrive. And so this is the most important work that our teachers can be doing. And our job is to make sure that we love them and support them as they go through that. Being Christ-like, Christ was a teacher, Christ hung out with sinners, and Christ loved everybody. And that's what we're being called to do.
Yeah, for sure. And in that Christ-like mode as well, thinking about, of course, Matthew 18 is there's a few verses in there that often is used as sort of the basis for conflict resolution, right? It's the direction that Jesus gave of if you have a conflict with somebody, then of course you go directly to them. And then if you can't resolve it, then you bring somebody with you. And then thirdly, you bring them kind of before the body and figure out how to resolve the conflict. Keep in mind that was couched within three vital parables that Jesus also shared, and this is towards the latter part of his ministry, where he was really focused on now the growth and development of believers now functioning together, and he told the parables of forgiveness. The last parable was about the king who forgave the servant, yet the servant did not forgive his fellow servant. And so what happened ultimately was the king then reneged on his pardon of the servant and then required him to repay everything. And it was a model of forgiveness, right? And the point of it all was, and this is how Jesus ended it, was you will be forgiven how you forgive, right? You'll be forgiven how you forgive. So this idea of difficult conversations, there's kind of two sides to this. One is we have to be very careful as Catholic educators to take seriously that call to forgive and forget, right? We have a bad theology often in American Christianity that says, well, I can forgive, but I can't forget, right? Well, according to Christ, if you go to read the red letters, right, that's a problem, right? Because you definitely don't want to show up before Jesus at the end of time and say, hey, Scott, I'm so glad you're here, but I can forgive, but I can't forget, right? That's a problem. That's going to be a real problem for me, right? So it is important that we do understand the direction here is as educators particularly, right? Because we get to love families through the journeys of life. Are they going to make mistakes? Of course. Are they going to gossip about us? And are they going to create dissension? Are they going to make life difficult for us? Absolutely. We know that's part of the journey. And yet we still have to love them. We still have to forgive them, and we still have to forget. We have to actually be like 50 First Dates and let it go. Was it Frozen, right? Let it go, right? Well, you got to let it go. You got to get over it, right? Well, it's not fair. So, well, go back and talk to Jesus then, right? Jesus said 70 times 7 to the disciples, very specifically. And that's what we're called to do every single day. We have to give them an A every single day. Now, this is the other side of that equation, right? We do have to be people of grace. On the other hand, we cannot confuse grace with mediocrity. Right. The idea that we're just going to let it go and let these dysfunctional situations fester, and we're going to let it become a cancer, and we're going to let it literally compromise the integrity of our school and of our leadership. No, that is not what we're called to. We are called to give grace in relationship to each other and restore relationship. On the other hand, we've made commitments to families to offer a quality education. And if you go back and look at your websites, almost all of you to self-describe as excellent, right? I think Tom, we found it was used on 96% of school websites, that word excellent or excellence, right? It's either in our mission statement or in our core values or somewhere else. If you're going to be excellent, you gotta be excellent, not just better, not just good, but excellent, right? And that means that we're willing to listen, we're willing to learn, we're willing to make adjustments. It's just part of the nature of this work. Now, one person asked Tom, they said, hey, you know, how do we help our educators get involved in the school community? They're not paid a lot.
Yep. And boy, I mean, I appreciate the sensitivity to educators' time. And again, I think these type of questions, the answer I'm going to give you, I actually got from another school because I asked the same question. And the model we now follow is that we list events that our educators need to attend, must attend, and then optional, and then we come up with a number. So they get to, it gives them choice. So if there are events throughout the year. You want them to attend an athletic event, you want them to attend the play, you want to attend a missions event, whatever it is. If you start up front and you see, Scott, number one thing is clarify expectations and tell people that we need people to attend these events. You need to attend 2 of them during the course of the year. You pick which 2 you're going to attend and let us know. And that way they have some choice. We have to respect, you know, this is a ministry and a calling. It's not a way to get rich. And so we have to be respectful of our teachers, but they've got to participate in the lives of their students. And so I don't think it's hard to ask them to do that.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, honestly, this goes back to the point earlier, is sometimes difficult people and conversations are caused by people who they just, you know, while they do have the credentials to do the work,
right,
they don't have the heart to do the work. Okay. And sometimes they don't even have the gift to do the work. We've all been in classrooms where the person had the credentials, but they really didn't have the gift. They were working for the paycheck versus being able to truly execute as an educator and want to be there, right? And this requires, you know, this is the tension around our work, is especially now when we have such a talent, you know, challenge with educators in the sort of the volume. We have to be dedicated to building a team of talented educators who want it. They have to want to be here. And what you're talking about is, if they want to be here, they have to want to be here for our students. They have to be somehow at some level engaged in school life. They have to have it. They have to have actually the gift to teach and have the intelligence and the other pieces necessary to actually do the job, whatever the job is. We're not talking about just teachers here. We're talking about every employee in the school, right? And then, so they have to want it, have it, and they have to own it, right? If I have to drag you to professional development and you're an educator, you kind of ought to change careers, right? Because this is not a game. We make very important decisions that have influence in people's lives. And so we have to, we've sometimes the lack of respect that people have for educators, we've actually earned it, because we haven't demonstrated a high level of professionalism and expectations of what it takes to be an educator. On the other hand, we need our schools to compensate our teachers and not build the schools on the backs of our teachers, right? It's a whole different conversation, but that is one of the challenges that our schools have, is thinking responsibly about our business model and how do we make sure that we are creating the best environment. But I don't want to pay cave people more money at all, right? This is about people who have a humility. They really do. They want it, they have it, they own it, and they're willing to really grow into the role. You're not changing an adult's attitude is mighty hard. And so I want to encourage you to try not to go down that path, because you're gonna burn a lot of energy when you should have just made the hard decision in the first place and found somebody else.
Yeah, and if I could just add one more thing, Scott, as we work to set expectations and hold people to a standard at our school, you have to make sure that you also share additional positivity and compliments to your team as well, because otherwise it's just going to feel like we're beating these people down, and all we're trying to do really is help them get better. So please make sure you recognize in an honest and genuine way when they meet or exceed standards that you've set for them, and
You got to celebrate.
show
Absolutely.
gratitude, and show
Yes.
gratitude for the work that they've done. Otherwise,
100%.
all this will feel like we're just giving them the hammer rather than giving them the heart, if you will.
Yeah, because accountability without love is just adult bullying, right?
100%.
That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to clarify expectations, establish shared principles, and then optimize the environment first and foremost for your educators, right? And we're using the term educators for all employees of the school, and then have clarity around what your agreed expectations are, right? Document it, put it in writing, clear for your board members. All board members should know expectations, right? Communicating with your pastors, communicating with your students, everybody, right? When you leave it vague, you risk more conflict and difficult situations because we haven't been specific about what do we want, right? Last point here is being careful about grace versus ungrace. Is we want to build a culture that is willing to move on, to let things go, but still hold to high standards, right? In other words, excellent schools do not emerge from low expectations, right? We have to have clear, high expectations and then have a disciplined engagement and commitment to executing those disciplines, right? That's where great schools come from. And it's rare. I will tell you that we have a whole plethora of good schools. We don't have a lot of great schools. And we desperately need schools who can step up to that challenge and really set the pace for everybody else. We've had some Q&A kind of throughout versus having that just kind of saved for the end. But we would love to continue to respond. Any of the questions you have, put them in the Q&A section. Last thing, we've got a great podcast out there called Educators Among Us. It is designed to just encourage educators in their calling and their faith. It's on Spotify and Apple and other places. So I encourage you to check that. They're real short. Tom, they're only like 8 to 10 minutes, so they're real short, but it's just little snippets of the Monday encouragement. We're also going to be telling stories about some significant life-changing educators who just the testimony of their work was so powerful. You got to hear it. So we're going to be featuring those on the podcast coming up this summer. So Laura, thank you for letting us be a part of NCEA and the great things you're doing. It's a privilege to work together with you to try to continue to build excellent Catholic schools.
Well, thank you, Scott and Tom, on behalf of our team. And by your definition, that was excellent. I'm curious how many people wrote down conflict avoided isn't conflict healed. I love that. I wrote it down. Go have those 99 to 1 meetings, y'all, right?
Yes.
Our next session is in the summer series is next week. If you haven't registered yet, it's June 21st on Wednesday, 1 p.m. And remember, you can register and then watch it on your own time. And it's 10 ways to bring the faith to life in the elementary classroom. And I do want to remind some of you joined us late, and I did share in the chat the next session. And they will be joining us on July 12th and doing a similar session for our educators. So if you want to come to that one as well, or send some teachers, that would be a great idea.
Love it.
Yes, and I just shared the survey link. So please
Give us your feedback. We would love that.
Yes, and we'll share it with Tom and Scott. So if you have any, constructive, make sure you do it gracefully.
We can take it.
You better.
And then we will also share with you a certificate of completion if you share your email in that survey link. So,
Sure.
Did we get, I
Awesome.
think we might have got a question. I'm going to give you guys a little time here.
It was
something
just a
else came in.
comment, just a thank you. So
Just-
yeah,
yeah.
thank you guys for all
Oh.
that you do. Really, we love educators and appreciate what you do. We admire your commitment to doing the hard things and being there for your families and your educators. Keep loving and leading those educators. That's the calling.
Yep. And enjoy your summer. Make sure you
And
take
enjoy
time for
your
yourself
summer.
this summer. Right.
Turn it off. That's right.
Yeah. Amen.
Enjoy your
Okay.
summer, turn it off, but then come still join all of us. And also,
There's that.
as always, remember the best resource we have is each other. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.
Awesome.
Thanks,
All right.
Laura.
Have a good
Thank
one.
you.
Bye now.
All
Thank
right.
you.